Hey everybody, welcome to a rather cold and a little bit foggy Portimao race facility here in southern Portugal. This is one of the finest race facilities in the world as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, we're here to ride this bad boy. Yes, this is the new beast. This is the 2020 KTM 1290 Super Duke car. I've been busting to get on this thing ever since I saw the photos of it. Super Duke car means a lot to me. I've ridden and raced the previous two iterations at Pikes Peak, done it 3 times. So I had the 2015 and then twice I had the 2017 model. So yeah, I just can't wait to get out and rip this thing. This thing is all new too. You know, we're getting brand new chassis, new engine, new electronics, new ergonomics, new everything. You know, ground up job. First time in the history of the Super Duke, the 1290 Super Duke car, that it's been completely revamped. So going to go out and have a street ride first. We're going to go and talk to a bunch of the people that made this machine what it is today. Can't wait. Let's get into it.
Under the skin of the new Super Duke sits a brand new chassis that's 3 times stiffer than the old frame. The motor now sits 38mm higher in the chassis, and the swing arm is the same length as before, but is now 15% stiffer for a better feel on the side of the tyre and under acceleration. There's more weight on the front end for better braking stability and cornering feel. WP has finally graced this bike with fully adjustable suspension front and rear, and the shock now utilises a linkage setup rather than operating directly off the swing arm like the old bike. The brakes are now Brembo Stylema 4-piston calipers, and Bridgestone has created a special S22 compound that's slightly softer in the sides of the tyre to allow better acceleration grip. The motor pumps out the same claimed power and torque of 177 horsepower and 103 pounds-foot, but now weighs a claimed 2.2 pounds lighter than in 2017. There's a choice of 5 riding modes ranging from cruisy rain modes to blow your face off track and performance modes, and the electronics have been reworked with new traction control and wheelie control algorithms, and it now runs a 6-axis IMU. The old one was a 5-axis unit that contains KTM's version of the slide control algorithm you see on the R1 and the Panigale.
Alright, here we go. Yoo-hoo! On the brand new 2020 KTM 1290 Super Duke R. Love this thing, love this bike. This is the first bike that I bought as a bike journo in like 10 years. I'm not kidding. When I bought the 2015 model, I loved it that much. So yeah, this is all completely new for 2020. I mean, the entire bike is new, but especially all this. You know, this is all a little bit more high tech than what we're sort of normally used to. Now, the most obvious thing that's different is this thing here. Now, this is a preset map switch, so you can go into your various modes within the system. We'll go through them a little bit later, but you go into your various modes within the system. And we're getting ready to take off. And if you wanted to say have, you know, level 5 traction on track throttle with, you know, certain wheelie control, whatever, you can then just flick that switch and bang, you straight into it, and it gives you more than one option, which is really cool. You know, it's not the prettiest looking of switches, I must say, but yeah, it does give you another level of control. There's a lot going on that side as well. Like that left switch block there, that's basically emission control, and also for this year, you know, we're getting switchable on the fly traction via the little paddle, little knobs on the left switch block, plus and minus on the left switch block, which is super handy, and something that a few other bikes have had in the past, but is new for the Super Duke. Now, to be honest, love that gear shift. This is a good gear shift system. The quick shift system on this bike, an optional extra, as they always have been with the Super Duke. But the thing that that struck me the most about when I first jumped on this bike, and it's exactly the same with this model now, is just how much room you have. You know, we're so used to having bikes that are cramped, especially if you're over 6 foot tall. There's just so much room to move on this thing. Like, it's basically, I used to think my KTM, my 2015, I used to call it my big 70s muscle car on 2 wheels. You know, there's plenty of room to move. Yeah, you can bash out 1,000-mile days in great comfort on these things. There's no pressure on any of your joints, on your arms, your legs, your bum. It's just such a comfy bike. It's a big dirt bike. But yeah, well, just initial feelings already so far is, I mean, you have so much torque on offer. this is second gear and just woo. It's just got such punch, and it doesn't rev out super high. You're looking at a bit over 10. I think it's about 10.5. The red line is, but you never want to rev it that high. You want to sort of play around the 5 to 7,000-8,000 RPM range, and you can get about 80% of the engine's torque at about 3,000 RPM. So you're looking at, right now we're at 4,000 RPM. So you're getting plenty of power, and you're getting plenty of torque. So it makes for such a good street bike, because you don't have to play around and keep trying to find what gear you're in, and it just makes the thing really enjoyable. New for this year as well are the new Brembo Stylema calipers. These are the things that are racing bikes like the Panigale, Ducati Panigale. These are the step up from the M50s, which the previous Super Duke had. They're brilliant brakes, and you get you have a good master cylinder on these things as well. You get plenty of power and nice feel of the lever. I'm not too sure exactly what the measurement is for the front brake master cylinder, but really nice feel of the lever. Plenty of power on offer, so it's certainly a very good braking package. But the Super Duke is very much an electronic sort of. I don't want to say death by electronics. It's certainly not that, but that's like everything now. Like all the big sports bikes. They're all, and this is a sports bike as far as I'm concerned. This is a very sporty bike, sporty naked bike. Doesn't matter if it doesn't have a fairing. You can, as we've seen in the past, guys like Chris Fillmore and all that. These things rip incredibly hard. But yeah, they're a sports bike first and foremost. Just a very comfortable sports bike. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to come back because I can't really see where I'm going, and I bet you guys can't either. So we'll come back when the weather clears up. Okie doke, this looks a little bit better. Mainly the big change for this year was, well, one of the big changes. I shouldn't say just the single change, but one of the really big changes was the new frame. New frame takes styling cues, I guess you could say, or geometry cues off the RC8, but it's not the RC8 frame. Primarily, one of the main things they wanted to get out of the new frame was better front end stability. Now, when I used to race these things, you could get these things into, going under brakes, they wouldn't be terribly stable. You would really have to set the chassis with the rear brake and really make sure the thing was spot on before you could really push into the corner. Now, you can get over the front a lot more with this new chassis. You can really bury that front end in, which is going to be great for guys that are coming off clip-on sports bikes, so clip-on handlebar sports bikes that have more weight on the front. You're going to have this thing sit more into its nose, allows you to really attack those corners a lot better, a lot harder than what you could before. Now, the old bike was had shared the same chassis as the Adventure line. That's one thing that a lot of people don't realise is the Adventure, the 1090, 1190 Adventures, they had the exact same chassis dimensions as this thing, as the Super Duke, which gives you an idea of how good that old bike was, because or how versatile, I should say, that old bike was, because they shared the same bloodline with a bike primarily designed to rip around off-road. Actually getting a decent pace here, this is good. There we go. Really good brake feel, but the great thing is, I don't know if you can really hear it on the at the moment, but I'm only cruising around in 4,000, bit over 4,000, nearly 5,000 RPM. Why bother revving the thing? You don't need to. There's so much torque on offer that you just sort of surf that big old torque wave. And you can leave the thing in gear higher everywhere. You'll be going through corners that you think you need to get a second gear for, or fourth gear for. You can go through fifth gear. Second gear, obviously, you get a lot more engine braking, so for the tight stuff. My goodness, look at that. Isn't that just divine? There, ladies and gentlemen, is the Algarve coast of Portugal. Oh man, that is stunning. Almost just want to stop and... Wow! Gorgeous. Look at those little beach shacks down there. Fabulous. Anyway, what was I saying? Back to the bike. Sorry guys, got a little bit carried away there. Got a little bit emotional.
One of the most noticeable things on this bike is this beast of a thing, this exhaust. Have a go at it. Massive thing. So yeah, you're running 2 catalytic converters with this now, but this is what they got to do to get these things through Euro 5 emissions now. Emission laws are getting tighter and tighter, but it adds a little bit of weight. But look, at the end of the day, it's really not that bad. Plus, if you're going to throw a full exhaust on it, you're going to get rid of the things anyway. Right, now, one of the interesting things here is you have adjustable foot peg positions. Now, if you have a look down here we go. So it works off that. So basically, you got to loosen that one and then loosen that one, and then you can move it on an eccentric and you can move it back so it moves up and moves down. Now, if you wanted to do it on the other side, we'll just go over to this other bike, the one that you prepared a little bit earlier. You just have to move the exhaust bolt there, loosen that, and this then moves back, and then you get to change the foot peg position. So quite a handy little thing, that. I love that dash. That dash is pretty badass. Now, if you ever wanted to have a bit of a look at what you have to do, where are we? There we go. Okay, so we've got heated grips. This is the basic model, the basic mode of what you can do. But if you actually wanted to change it, so actually we'll get out of this bit. Okay, so once you get out of all that stuff and you actually want to get in there and have a bit of a play around, you go under here, which is a little like that on the dash. Across, and here is all your bits and pieces. Now you can go through so many different things: motorcycle setting, heated grips, traction control settings, motor slip regulation, ABS mode. Now if you want to go into your ride modes, you got 5 different modes. Now the track and performance modes, they come as an optional extra, and once you get in there, then you can start messing around with all kinds of other things. You got different throttle modes and anti-wheelie launch control, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of different things here. You can go into My Ride, which has audio player, navigation, phone pairing, all that stuff. So now that we're in performance mode, you have this. This is your traction control that you can go up to 9 different settings, +9 up to 0, and that all happens via these little switches here, which is super badass. Love that stuff. But the dashes on these things now, and all the electronics especially, like, you are playing around with these things for a very long time before you really figure out exactly what you want to do. But I thought you'd give you guys just a little bit of an idea about what you have to do to change these things.
Mr. Chris Ulrich in front of us. Yeah, that's a little bit nicer throttle response now. We're in performance mode, so throttle's a bit more direct. Got to take that wheelie control back. The chassis of this thing now, we can bury the front end a little bit more, which is, real sports riders are really going to enjoy this. Got to appreciate the kind of work that KTM's put into this thing. This has now become much more of a hard-edged sports bike. We are still yet to go out there and really run it hard on the track, and we'll do that a little bit later today. Yeah, let's get after it a bit. Oh man, it's got such good pickup, far out. Man, I've got to say, this thing turns so much better than the old bike used to. The old bike was good anyway, but this thing just turns so sweetly. Engine is, I think, 37mm higher in the frame too. So it gives you a lot more direct sort of tip in as well. Like you're a little bit higher in the frame. Everything in this frame is designed to put more weight on that front end. It's designed to load that front tire up for a more sure-footed feeling for when you do tip it in. But because everything's just that little bit higher, it's kind of like, when you pick up a nice big heavy weight and you put it on your chest, and you could fall into a thing really much easier than you can if you were only just holding it just above the ground. It's all about the pendulum effect, as it were. And it's a very fine line with that, as opposed to to being, too high and it becoming nervous, and the tip end not being fluid or controllable, I guess is probably the best way to describe it. You want it to be fast, but you also want it to be sort of progressive enough and give the right feedback so you know what's up. But man, this is a lot. The old one, you could rip plenty hard on the old one, there's no doubt about that, but yeah, you can definitely get after it a little bit more on this thing. But just this motor is just, I love this bike. I love this bike. Geez, you can tell who was the AMA Superbike racer in front of us, can't you, with his riding style? So I'm probably using the gearbox a little bit harder than I should. I'm going to let the thing roll in a bit more rather than using quite as much engine braking. Ah, lovely.
Well, after that quick charge through the hills, when we got back to the Portimao race circuit, I thought I'd grab 10 minutes with the man who is essentially the Super Duke's dad, KTM's longtime project leader, Herman Spawn.
Hey guys, so just before we hit the track, I wanted to introduce you to Herman Spawn here. Now Herman has been the project developer, or project leader, I should say, for the KTM Super Duke since 2000,
Yes.
correct? So you've forgotten more about the Super Duke than most people will ever know. I mean, there's such a huge amount of changes with this bike, but let's look at the chassis first. So, yeah, let's go through it. So your engine's higher, swing arm pivot's higher.
Yeah.
Talk us through it.
Yes, we know from the old Super Duke that we have not the right anti-squat behavior.
Right.
This was the reason why we say, okay, we have to adjust it, that we don't have this running wide out of the corner, that it was stable, that the weight transfer is not so much to the rear. That means we increase it at this amount that when you accelerate hard out of the corner, that you can stay your line.
Yeah.
Additionally, it helps when you bring it up the center of gravity to this certain level what we have, that you get a better handling.
Yes.
This was the one what we have done for the rear end, that we get more control for it. But what was also really important, we know also that our frame was really a soft frame, more supermoto frame, but not for really racetrack behaviors.
This was the same frame that they had on the adventure bikes.
Before on the first Super Duke, it was more or less the same than the Adventure. It was a little bit shorter and about this a little bit stiffer, but it was not enough that you can have the higher amount of forces what you have to withstand. About this, we make it much torsional stiffer. That we can do this, have we now also the front when you look here. On the front, before we have no mounting point on the front, what is directly linked to the steering head.
Right,
With this modification, we have increased 3 times the torsional stiffness.
Wow, okay.
And this helps us a lot to get a better feedback from the front. Additional, we have now 2 engine hangers, what brings the frame fixing here to the engine, and that means with the stiffness of this part we can adjust the stiffness of the chassis.
Right.
That means we can make softer or stiffer the torsional stiffness, and also what is really important, the side stiffness. At maximum lean angle, the suspension doesn't work so good. You was at this lean angle and you have not so much force in this direction, you have more force in this direction, and you need a good behavior from this side, that it works for the front end, also for the stiffness for the swing arm, that you have the feeling from the rear. And also additionally, it's important that you have the right amount of stiffness from the rims. And all together gives a package where you have the safety feeling. On the road, you know everyone at each every time what is on the front tire is happening. Is it slippery, you have grip, you can push or you have to go back, and this is what really is funny, and it helps you on the official road, but also on the track. The track, it's really important when you go to the maximum that you feel what the tire is doing.
So with the
The swing arm is the same length as it was before,
Yeah.
but it's now raised up higher in the chassis.
It's the front, the pivot is higher.
Yep, pivot.
And the pivot is higher. And additional, we have changed also on the swing arm, the stiffness. And we can do it without increase the weight.
Right.
The reason is that the brace, what we have before on the top, we go to the lower end.
Right.
About this, the neutral point goes lower.
Yeah.
That means you need, with the same stiffness from the swing arm, you have less movement on the tire.
Right.
It helps you a lot.
Okay.
And this together makes it as it works now.
Yeah. So you 38 mil, is it? The engine is higher in
33.
33 mil.
Sorry, the engine is 38 mil higher,
Yes.
and additional 5 millimeter we have lift the swing arm pivot in the engine.
Right.
That means in some races it was 43.
Right. Okay. And so the shock itself, I'll get this right. So the shock itself is not shorter. So the shock is the same length, but has more travel.
It was not complete the same length. The main difference what we have here, before we have only 57 mils shock stroke,
Yep.
where we have the direct link to the swing arm.
Yep.
Now we have changed to a linkage.
Yeah, you have linkage,
Linkage gives you much more possibilities to adjust to the right amount of progression. Also how the movement is on the shock with small pumps off the street. And with all them together you can create a good feeling from the rear, and also have the safety for top end when you have a high compression that you don't come to the end.
Yeah. So you go full travel.
Yeah, full travel.
Yeah. Okay. So we move to the front. What's different with the front?
On the front, we have now offset from 32 millimeters instead of 29.
Yep.
We have no new triple clamps. Then we have on the fork, we have now a preload adjuster, and we have an aluminum cartridge, and the aluminum cartridge is also bigger than before.
Right. Okay. Great.
And this also helps for a better response from the front.
Yep. Yeah. You can feel on the street that it
Yeah.
has much more of a nose-heavy feel than the old one. You can
Not so now it was not so much movement like
Yeah,
this.
but it's more
the acceleration.
stable now.
It's more stable. Holds the front end on its position.
I mean, you start looking at the motor as well. Motor now we have, what is it, 90% or 80% of torque at 3,000 RPM, something like that. That's full on.
Well, yeah, this is what you need for the road.
Yeah.
When you have a motorcycle where you have the torque at maximum RPM, also the maximum power. This is, as we know, when you're in these revs with the second gears, you was somewhere of speed limits.
Yes.
Here on the Super Duke, you have also the possibility to drive with third gear, with a mid-range torque from 114 newton meters
gear higher.
at 4,500 newtons, and you have always the right amount of torque. That means when you ride on the road, you never know how the curves are. If you need this gear or this gear, the Super Duke, it makes no matter.
I love it. Yeah, well, I hope that, guys. I hope that's given you guys a little bit of an idea of the tech stuff. I mean, we could sit here and talk all day, but I'm going to go and get changed and going out and rip this thing around the tracks. I cannot wait. Evan, thanks very much for your time, man.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Track session on the 2020 KTM 1290 Super Duke. And of course we have to change everything. Okay, so remember, okay. Ride mode. Track. Throttle. And go sport. Anti-wheelie. Off. Good. Shall we? Alrighty. So still got S22 rubber on this. This is not the race version, this bike. Now this circuit, the Portimao circuit in Portugal, is one of the finest pieces of road or circuits in the world, as far as I'm concerned at least. Now, talking to Jeremy McWilliams, he's been using third for most of this place, or most of the tight ones. down the hill. You can actually take this one pretty much flat out. Back over to Supermoto style end. Into the third. God, it's like you got to be game to run those World Superbike lines. Yeah, they run over the curve there, but I'm not prepared to. Alright, let's give this a run. Open her up down the straight. Oh, what a ball that is! Hey, you have to be careful on the brakes here because it comes up on you. So we're on street or sport throttle mode and traction level 4. The traction control kicks in so much smoother. I mean, I had a 2015 model without on or off, whereas this is just so progressive. Let's give her a run down the chute. Finish the corner off, let's go! Gear shift is really, really nice. Super quick and precise, but it's also a little bit heavier than some of the other quick shifters out there, which I personally like. I like a much more, like a more controlled quick shift. I don't like those quick shifts that you can just breathe on, whereas this one, much nicer. Track settings are still, these are actually track standard settings. They're still pretty good. Love just snicking gears. Oh, put this bum hole of a corner. Gee, that's fun.
Wow, what a day. You know, it's pretty cool, man, when you go ripping around Portimao and the hills in Portugal on this thing. Yeah, the KTM Super Duke, as I've said before, is a bike, you know, very close to my heart. You know, had a lot of great experiences on the 2015 model and later the 2017 model. You know, the best thing, I guess, straight off the bat that I could say about the new model anyway, I mean, look, everything on this thing's different. There's very few things that are unchanged from the 2017 model, but it still feels like a KTM Super Duke. It's still got that monstrous torque hit. It's still got the same, roughly the same ergonomics. So it has that continual bloodline that, I mean, I really like it when you can see the development of something, and instead of it just being a completely different brand new bike, it still has that character, that same sort of feel that I've just completely fallen in love with over the years. And yeah, super cool. But the motor is not really that surprising, to be honest. Like, there's more power everywhere. The throttle is a lot smoother. The electronics with the motor, how they work with the motor, the traction control and all that, they don't cut in anywhere as near as harsh. But yeah, the motor's got tons of torque, man, like far out. Now, this thing doesn't rev that high as well. So particularly when you're at the track, you know, it's about 10.5, I think the red line is on this. You want to make sure you're using a gear taller, because if you're using the lower gears and you're getting high RPM in the lower gears, the thing can be really snatchy. It can be really sort of flighty, I think. Snatchy is probably not the right word. But yeah, you want to just use that torque, keep the revs sort of between 5,000 and 8,000 RPM or so, and let the thing drive out and really mash the tires into the ground. It's a beautiful, beautiful bike, far out, absolutely love it. But the engine feels, you know, just beefier than it did before. Throttle response is beautiful. You've all got five different maps, you know, starting with the rain mode all the way up to track performance. So you can tailor this thing completely to your needs. When we were at the track at Portimao, ran it in track performance, in the track mode for the majority of the time. Took the anti-wheelie off because the anti-wheelie does start to sort of become a bit of an issue around here because the thing just wants to wheelie all over the place. And this place is basically a roller coaster for a motorcycle. So you have to be a bit careful of that and use the rear brake and sort of boss the bike a little bit. But for me, the biggest difference out of everything with this new bike, for me, the biggest difference is the chassis. 3 times as stiff as the old one. 3 times as stiff. That's a huge difference, and it just, everything about the thing is just turns in nicer. It holds its line way better than the old one does. Especially like when we're racing at Pikes Peak, we had issues of trying to keep the line, trying to keep the mid corner line, and then when you get on the gas, trying to stop the thing from just spearing off and understeering off to the distance. And this thing, it steers now like a real sports bike. With the change in geometry at the back end, and the fact now that they're running a linkage on the rear shock, with all that stuff, and the thing tipping its nose much on the front, it really gives the rider a lot of aggression. You can really attack the corners a bit more than what you could, and it throws feedback back at you. You always know where you are. It's such a sublime feeling, man. It's like, I love it. I really do. We got to have a few laps on the hot one as well. Now the hot one has, the Akrapovic race exhaust. It's got the Power Parts map in it, different suspension, WP suspension. Also got Bridgestone V02 slick tires on it. Now, it's as good as it sounds. It really is. That felt a lot like my old race bike did, to be honest. Bit stiffer. You could attack the corners real well, and like all the good things about the production bike, about it being better on the front, it was even better again when you had the race kit stuff on it. Like the Power Parts catalog is just absolute heaven for bike guys. If you get on there and you've got a bit of coin and you want to spend and do up your Super Duke, that's the way to go, man. There's just so much stuff in there, so many cool things that you can buy, like from your rear sets to your levers to the anodized triple clamps to the performance stuff like the suspension, the brakes. Or no, you don't need the brakes. You can actually change the discs, but man, everything about that race bike sounds amazing too. It's just rough. Yeah, it's super cool. So yeah, happy times on that race bike. The styling I think is on point. A lot of the guys I've read in comments on social media, they didn't like the blue. The black is basically as it always was, the blue on the tank I'm in on this one. I think it looks damn good. It looks better in the metal, I think, than it does in the photos. But yeah, the bike itself, it's just on the road, it's sublime. It's a really lovely bike. It's super smooth. Plenty of torque to run, great brakes as well. When you're running with the Brembo Stylema calipers, they're best calipers basically on the market now. It's the same stuff you're getting on things like Ducati Panigales and all that kind of stuff. So, you're getting top line brakes. The suspension with you now got fully adjustable front and rear suspension. Suspension action is very good. I mean, I know I'm sounding like a bit of a broken record here, but it's a great bike. It really is. The old bike was good. This is just a sort of an up-spec version, I guess you could say. Like everything that was sort of maybe not so good about the chassis, they've completely changed it and they've enhanced it. And the good thing is they've kept all the great points, like that super strong engine. The gear shift is really nice. The brakes are good. Like it's a ripper of a bike, man. I'm sold. I always have been really on KTM Super Dukes, but yeah, really enjoyed the thing. Look, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you'd like, please give us a thumbs up and a subscribe underneath. I'd love to hear all your comments. Until next time, you guys, I am, as you can see, a talking jelly bean. Until next time, see you soon. Bye.